On the frigid morning of January 18th, the Metropolitan Police Department in Washington, D.C. buzzed with the usual hum of activity. Yet, amidst the routine, a distressed phone call shattered the monotony. Alexis Monroe, a vibrant 29-year-old known for her infectious energy, was reported missing by her closest friends. Her sudden absence was a jarring anomaly in her otherwise lively life. At the station, officers gathered around as Alexis's friends recounted their last interactions with her. The conversation quickly turned to Devontae Lewis, Alexis's boyfriend. Murmurs hinted at underlying issues between them. Friends spoke of Alexis mentioning Devontae's growing unease with her social engagements. Although emotions ran high, inconsistencies crept into their statements, painting a picture of tension but leaving threads unconnected. The officers noted these conflicting accounts and decided that speaking with Devontae was imperative. Capitol Heights was quiet when officers arrived at Devontae's apartment later that day. The air felt thick with unspoken tension as they knocked on his door. Welcoming them inside, Devontae appeared calm, yet his eyes betrayed a flicker of unease. When asked about Alexis's whereabouts, he claimed she had left voluntarily after a heated argument, taking a suitcase with her. The officers listened intently, but skepticism crept into their minds when they recalled seeing that very suitcase in Alexis's apartment during an initial check. Devontae's evasive demeanor and nervous fidgeting only deepened their suspicions. His answers were precise, but lacked the genuine concern expected from someone whose partner was missing. Despite his insistence on her voluntary departure, the narrative seemed more tangled than ever. The officers exchanged glances that spoke volumes. There was more here than met the eye. A search warrant became an inevitable next step. There were too many unanswered questions and too much at stake. As evening descended over Capitol Heights, the investigators returned to the precinct to draft their warrant request. Each officer pondered the discrepancies between Devontae's story and what they had observed firsthand. The suitcase in particular stood out, a glaring contradiction that could not be ignored. Back at Alexis's apartment, her friends remained anxious. Their earlier hints about Devontae's controlling nature now seemed more pronounced in light of his contradictory statements. The tension between what could be true and what was merely suspicion hung like a thick fog. In those moments of silence, as investigators pieced together the timeline of Alexis's disappearance against the backdrop of Devontae's account, an unsettling reality loomed. Their next steps might uncover truths more sinister than anticipated. With a sense of urgency tempered by methodical precision, the team finalized their request for a search warrant at Devontae's residence. They knew they were stepping into potentially dangerous territory. If their hunches were correct, Alexis's fate hinged on what they might find behind those walls. As they prepared to execute their plan, an air of anticipation settled over them, a palpable tension that signaled both fear and determination. The path ahead was fraught with unknowns, yet each step brought them closer to unraveling the mystery surrounding Alexis Monroe's disappearance. The stage was set for what lay beyond that threshold, a confrontation with truth or deception that would ultimately reveal whether Devontae's quiet demeanor masked something far more chilling. And as they drove through the shadowed streets towards his apartment once more, a single question echoed in their minds. What secrets lurked within those walls? Their headlights pierced through the darkness as they approached Devontae's home again, a beacon pointing towards answers yet unspoken. The headlights of unmarked police cars cut through the darkness surrounding Devontae's apartment. The officers, now armed with a search warrant, prepared to unveil the secrets hidden within those walls. But first, they'd had to navigate the bureaucracy of the Capitol Heights courthouse. Inside the courthouse, tension was as thick as the winter air outside. Prosecutors were skeptical of granting a warrant without firm evidence of probable cause. The lead investigator laid out the inconsistencies in Devontae's story and Alexis's friend's account of her life. Yet it was Alexis's phone records that finally tipped the scales. Her last known location was tagged at Devontae's residence, a detail impossible to ignore. With this revelation, the warrant was secured. Back at Devontae's apartment, officers prepared to search every inch for evidence of Alexis's presence. The nauseating odor that greeted them was enough to make even seasoned investigators step back. The apartment was a chaotic mess, papers scattered, furniture overturned, as if a storm had ravaged through. As they moved through the rooms, each creak of the floorboards echoed ominously in their ears. The living room was strewn with construction supplies. Cinder blocks and bags of cement lined one side of the room. It wasn't until an officer noticed a slight discrepancy in the wall's paneling that they began to suspect something darker lay beneath. With measured precision, they dismantled the drywall piece by piece until what lay behind it confirmed their worst fears. Alexis Monroe, concealed in an improvised tomb. The sight was enough to silence even the most vocal among them. The reality of her fate hit harder than any suspicion or theory they had entertained. The discovery contradicted Devontae's story entirely. There was no voluntary departure, nor any argument that ended with Alexis leaving on her own accord. The forensic team descended upon the scene, methodical and grim in their task of preserving every piece of evidence that could speak for Alexis when she no longer could. In tandem with preserving evidence, another team began scrutinizing surveillance footage from nearby cameras. They were determined to trace Devontae's movements leading up to Alexis's disappearance, a task made urgent by their grim discovery. As officers continued their work, a sense of urgency permeated through every action and word spoken among them. Yet amidst this flurry of activity and emotion lay another layer, a chilling quietude that seemed to whisper truths yet unspoken. The unsettling scene at Devontae's apartment now required more than just forensic attention. It begged answers that would require patience and persistence to uncover fully. As dusk gave way to night once more, the officers reconvened outside the apartment complex, their minds racing with possibilities and questions yet unanswered. What other secrets did this apartment hold? And what else had Devontae hidden away in his web of deception? Just as they were about to leave, a call came through from another officer stationed at a surveillance post nearby. The footage had revealed something crucial: an image of Devontae entering his apartment late one night, carrying an item not yet accounted for in their search. This revelation sent chills down their spines. It suggested there might be more hidden within these walls than they'd initially thought. With renewed resolve, they planned their next steps carefully, aware now more than ever how close they were to uncovering all facets of this dark narrative. What else lay buried beneath Devontae's calculated facade? Each answer seemed only to breed further questions, a mystery deepening with every passing hour. Their collective breaths caught as one officer pointed towards an overlooked section of floorboards near where Alexis had been found. A potential hiding spot, perhaps? It begged immediate examination, but would wait until morning light. As they packed up for the night, uncertainty loomed large. What new horrors would daylight reveal? The dim light of the Capitol Heights police station flickered as officers huddled around the surveillance monitors, their faces illuminated by the screens. The chilling discoveries at Devontae's apartment lingered in their minds, an unshakable reminder of the grim reality they faced. But now, they needed more than just a body hidden behind drywall. They needed a timeline that could speak to motive and intent. Start with the footage from the hardware store. Detective Ramirez directed, his voice cutting through the tense silence. The video was extensive, lacking precise timestamps, and would require meticulous cross-referencing with other evidence. Hours passed as they scrutinized each frame. The grainy images showed Devontae in construction gear, purchasing cinder blocks and bags of cement, items eerily familiar from the scene at his apartment. This alignment suggested a narrative far different from his claims of an accidental death. "This doesn't look like someone reacting to a spur-of-the-moment incident," Officer Lee pointed out, gesturing towards the screen where Devontae appeared calm and collected. "This is planned concealment. We need to bring him in for a more pressing interview." The transition was clear. This evidence supported a premeditated act rather than a crime of passion. With this new development, their next move was critical. Confronting Devontae with these findings could either unravel his story or compel him to confess. Meanwhile, at the Capitol Heights Crime Lab, forensic experts worked tirelessly to process Alexis's remains and the apartment scene for concrete evidence. The decomposition and prior contamination complicated matters, but every detail was crucial. "We have organic traces on the construction materials," noted Dr. Gwynn as she meticulously examined a cinder block under the microscope. "They match Alexis's DNA." Her words hung heavy in the air, a forensic confirmation that shattered Devontae's narrative of Alexis leaving voluntarily. The technical expertise required to discern these traces was immense, but it offered undeniable proof against his claims. "With this evidence," Detective Ramirez mused aloud, "we can confront him again. He can't wriggle out of this with talk of accidents or arguments gone wrong." As daylight waned outside the lab, the officers regrouped, their resolve steeled by these discoveries. The path forward was fraught with challenges. Even with mounting evidence, obtaining a confession from Devontae would require careful strategy. Back at the station, preparations for another interview with Devontae began in earnest. They knew this confrontation would be pivotal, not just for Alexis's case, but for justice itself. As they readied themselves to head over to question Devontae once more, a sudden call came through on Detective Ramirez's phone. An officer at another surveillance post had uncovered new footage, one that showed Devontae carrying what seemed like a large suitcase into his apartment. This revelation sent a ripple through the team, a suitcase large enough to potentially hide more than just clothes or personal items. It begged immediate attention and raised questions about what else might be concealed within those walls. With hearts pounding and adrenaline surging, they realized this could change everything they thought they knew about Alexis's final hours. As they drove towards Devontae's location, headlights piercing through the early evening fog, one question loomed larger than ever. What secrets did that suitcase hold? And were there yet darker truths waiting to be unearthed? Each mile brought them closer to confronting Devontae and closer to unraveling a mystery that had claimed far more than one life. It had shattered trust and left an entire community in its wake. As they sped towards Devontae's apartment, the officers felt the weight of the new revelation, a suitcase large enough to hide sinister truths. This thought lingered ominously as they entered the Capitol Heights police station, where Devontae sat in a stark interrogation room, unaware of their latest findings. Detective Ramirez leaned forward, eyes steady on Devontae. "We found more than just inconsistencies in your story, Devontae," he began, his voice low yet unwavering. "The construction materials, the drywall, they tell a different tale." Devontae's demeanor was taut, his hands clasped tightly together. "I never meant for it to happen," he murmured finally, his voice a bare whisper. "We argued. It got out of hand. I didn't mean to." The confession complicated things. His admission suggested a momentary loss of control rather than premeditated murder. Yet, the evidence painted another picture entirely. Detective Ramirez pressed on. Why buy cement and cinder blocks in advance? Why not call for help if it was an accident? Ramirez's questions pierced through Devontae's defenses. "I panicked," Devontae claimed, eyes darting nervously around the room as though searching for a lifeline. "I thought I could fix it before anyone knew." The detectives exchanged glances, knowing this was only part of the truth. They needed more to solidify charges that would withstand scrutiny in court and provide clarity to a grieving community. In the Capitol Heights District Attorney's Office, prosecutors sifted through evidence and Devontae's confession, grappling with the complexity of framing charges. The line between premeditated murder and manslaughter seemed to blur with each passing moment. His claims of panic don't exclude intent, argued Assistant DA Morrison, fingers tapping impatiently on the conference table. But we need to counteract this accidental death narrative he's spinning. Further analysis revealed Devontae had meticulously deleted digital footprints, search histories related to body disposal and construction techniques, casting doubt on his panicked defense. "These actions are calculated," Morrison concluded, pointing at the screen displaying digital evidence. "He didn't just lose control, he planned this out." With newfound resolve, they moved towards preparing for a court hearing that would demand justice for Alexis and address the community's need for answers. Meanwhile, outside the courthouse, whispers of the case spread through Capitol Heights like wildfire. Residents demanded transparency and justice for Alexis Monroe, a young woman whose life ended too soon under murky circumstances. As night approached once more, Detective Ramirez received an urgent call from an officer reviewing additional footage near Devontae's apartment, a clip showing him discarding items into a dumpster several blocks away. Heart pounding with anticipation and dread, Ramirez knew this could be pivotal evidence, perhaps holding clues to further unraveling Alexis's tragic fate. Underneath the streetlight's glow, officers rushed towards the site, their determination unwavering, despite knowing what they might uncover could deepen the community's sorrow yet further. What secrets did those discarded items hold? Could they finally unveil the full extent of Devontae's dark intentions? As they approached the dumpster, each step echoed with tension, their breath visible in the cold night air, and one question loomed larger than ever. Would this discovery finally close one chapter in Alexis's story and open another? In that moment of charged silence before lifting the dumpster lid, everything seemed possible, yet unbearably uncertain. A cliffhanger suspended between truth and deception. The discovery of Devontae's discarded items in the dumpster had sent shockwaves through everyone involved. As investigators meticulously sifted through the trash, they uncovered more than just remnants of a hastily concealed crime. Among the debris were Alexis's personal belongings, her ID, a bracelet she always wore, and a torn photograph. Each item told a story, not just of loss, but of deliberate erasure. With this new evidence, the narrative of Alexis's disappearance took on even darker hues. It was clear that Devontae had not only attempted to hide his actions, but also sought to obliterate her presence entirely. This revelation added a chilling layer to an already complex case. As dawn broke over Capitol Heights, the media was abuzz with speculation. News vans lined the streets outside the courthouse, their satellite dishes pointed skyward like metallic sentinels. A press conference had been called to address the unfolding drama and quell rising public unrest. Detective Ramirez stood under the glare of cameras, flanked by colleagues as he addressed the crowd. "We are committed to uncovering all aspects of this case," he began, his voice steady despite the pressure. "While we've obtained critical evidence suggesting premeditation, we urge the public not to jump to conclusions until all facts are presented in court." The media frenzy threatened to skew public perception, with commentators arguing over Devontae's motives and potential outcomes. Some insisted on his guilt, citing evidence. Others hesitated, swayed by his claims of accidental involvement. This split mirrored the community's growing unrest. "It's not just about what happened," one reporter shouted from the back, "but why it happened." Ramirez nodded solemnly. "Understanding motive is key," he replied. "And that's something we are diligently working towards." As they wrapped up the conference, it was evident that public opinion was polarized, setting a tense stage for the upcoming trial where emotions would clash with hard evidence. That evening, a vigil was held at a local church in memory of Alexis Monroe. The air was thick with emotion, as friends and neighbors gathered under flickering candlelight to remember a vibrant life unjustly dimmed. Inside, the atmosphere was somber, yet charged with undercurrents of anger and sorrow. Speakers shared anecdotes about Alexis, her infectious laughter, her dreams and aspirations that now would never be realized. Yet, amidst these heartfelt tributes were whispers of division. Some mourners believed firmly in Devontae's innocence, a tragic victim of circumstances beyond his control, while others were convinced of his guilt. "She was full of life," declared one friend tearfully at the podium. "She deserved so much more than this senseless end." The vigil provided a space for collective grieving, but also highlighted rifts within the community, a microcosm of broader societal struggles between belief and evidence. Outside the church, candles flickered against the cold night wind as people lingered in small groups, continuing discussions about justice and truth. As midnight approached and candles burned low, one thing became clear: Alexis's story had become more than just a criminal investigation. It was now a symbol around which community sentiments coalesced, of outrage demanding accountability and hope seeking closure. The trial loomed on the horizon like an inevitable storm, one that promised to bring clarity to some while leaving others grappling with unanswered questions. In those last moments before dispersing into the night, an unsettling realization hung in the air. No matter what verdict would emerge from the courtroom battle ahead, Capitol Heights would never be quite the same again.